Okay, thank you for coming out to our EquatIO docs, slides, forms, drawings, and PDFs. This is actually our first official training on this. So this is really exciting. As Chris, who's in the room with me, will share or know that EquatIO has been something I've been excited about now for the last few years, and the product just keeps getting better and better. And what's nice is that in this online environment that we're in right now, that EquatIO, this is the best time to embrace and learn this product. There are going to be 2 sessions this week on EquatIO. Today is going to be in particular in the Google world in terms of the docs, slides, forms, drawings, and PDFs. And later this week, I will be doing a session on math spaces. And you will get a little bit of a taste of math space today because there is an interaction with math space and Google Docs and so on if you choose to go down that road. Or what I will be exploring later this week is math space on its own entity, which is a very, very rich environment. I absolutely love it, but I love how EquatIO builds into our other Google sessions as well, like our other doc slides and so on. Okay, so let's get going here. Some of you who are not familiar with EquatIO, just want to make sure that we're all up to speed. What is exactly this product? It is a math extension, which that's why it works for across the board to all these products in the Google domain. That because it's there in the very top bar, and we're going to talk about that. How do you find EquatIO in your Google Chrome environment, and how can we turn it on, and all those kind of things. But here's the main thing is that no matter what we do, because I'm not digging into specifically just docs, slides, forms, drawings, and PDFs, what's really sweet about this product is that it's uniform. So no matter which application you're in, you will see very much the same settings. So that's where I'm going to dig into today is what are those settings? What are the options here so that when you're in either of those platforms, you'll feel comfortable with using that product in this environment. So main features of EquatIO, there's more features here by all means. I just kind of listed some of the big key ones where we have math, chemistry, and formula prediction. So I'll show you it live. After I go through the slideshow, just to make sure I cover everything what is a part of EquatIO, I have then choose to do the latter part of our session this morning in reference to actually digging in and playing and with the product. But I want to make sure you're aware of everything first. And this presentation is available to you, if I haven't mentioned this yet, in the event. And I will post this in our staff lounge with a link to this presentation as well. So you don't have to make feverish notes. This will be available to you. What I mean by the prediction piece too, and you'll see it live as I start typing in something like a formula, say the quadratic formula, as I'm typing it, it will populate. Even if I want to do square root, and so when I start typing it, you will see it populate. So it's very cool that way. EquatIO Mobile, I can't wait to show you this piece. This is great for in this environment, and when I talk about math spaces later this week is where I can again take pictures of maybe my students' work. So let's say they want to do their math handwritten, no problem. They just have to take a picture of it, and it easily embeds into a Google Doc or Forms or whatever we're working with. So that's a really neat piece. Speech to math, I did that specifically because this product is really good where if I try to dictate and I start speaking math, it will do a fantastic job in knowing what I'm saying, and it will exclude and not hear the ums, the ahs, and so on in between that won't get intermingled with the actual math. And the math to speech. So a lot of the math there using a screenshot reader, it will recognize what it is and read the math to you. It won't, if you've ever tried reading speeches, like I'd say, even through screenshot reader, which is just in, let's say, the PDF form. If I have that read to me, it sounds really funny when you have math try to be read back to you. And that's must be very frustrating, especially for students who could really use that to be read to us. This using EquatIO, it reads the math to us very particular. It's fantastic. So you'll see that live here to this morning. Handwriting to math. So fantastic again for a lot of our students in our district. We have touchscreen Chromebooks. So what does that look like? Where if I just want to write out the math, I don't want to type the math, and how it actually converts to text. And finally, we have the Desmos graphing calculator. So I'm going to show you how that graphing can be nicely embedded within our documents. And for those of us who've taught math for a long time, this has been such a frustrating thing with just equation editors over the years and trying to get graphs nicely into our documentation. It's not been an easy task. And now with EquatIO, it's much, much easier. So as I mentioned before, regardless of whether we're in docs, slides, forms, drawings, or PDFs, all these features I'm going to talk about now will be available. So it won't be, well, how does it work in Google Drawings versus Google Docs? It's all the same. All right, so getting started, and the one thing is like, well, how do I find EquatIO? How do I turn this on? And in the very top bar, we have a bunch of little icons along the top here. I think people are getting more and more comfortable with knowing now about Chrome extensions. It is up there in this little diamond. I have seen it alter a couple times where I see that little diamond, and I do see like a little Sigma notation here at times, but for the most part, at this time, it's just a blue diamond. And when we click on that, it does open it up. With PDFs, there is a bit of a caveat here where you need it's a kind of a two-pronged process where you need to open up the open up the PDF first using Read and Write for Google Chrome, and I will show you that. And then you can click on the blue diamond for that to be turned on and to work so that it's ready to be interactive for you. And in Google Forms, you don't need to click on the diamond in the top. What's really neat is in Google Forms is that you will see little blue Sigma icons right here. So you just have to click on that at any time, and you can just click on it and you're good to go to get into using your Google Forms and using EquatIO with that. So you maybe have been seeing these little blue icons for a long time in Google Forms. And I've had people say, can you just get rid of those? I'm like, no, they're fantastic. You just don't know what it can do. So I will show you live today what you can do with that inside your Google Forms. Here basically is the EquatIO toolbar. So when we do turn it on, so this could be a helpful resource to look back to if need be. What does everything do? But here's what I love about EquatIO as well, like many products out there these days. If you hover over any of these tools, it will populate what it is. So the equation editor is the big one that I know that I use a lot. Just like back in the day, I would have used maybe in Microsoft Word, I would have tried to use equation editor. This is the equation editor, the first one. LaTeX, I've heard it being pronounced different ways. Editor, that's for more of those for those of you who are like really sophisticated and who's done this math stuff for a long time ago in this format, you'd be comfortable with it. But I would say 98% of the time, I don't know anybody who's there, but it is an option for those of you who are all in the LaTeX world. The graph editor I mentioned with the Desmos, this is the button how you do that. The handwriting, speech input, the EquatIO mobile, inserting a math space, and this is the screenshot reader as mentioned. This is not as intuitive when you say screenshot reader. So this is that piece where I mentioned is the optical character recognition, where you create a little box around something you want read back to you. So, and I will show you that one as well. Okay, the equation editor. So what I'm going to do is those tools that were there, I'm going to quickly talk about them. So then we'll have an opportunity then to dig into those tools and how they work. So the equation editor, for at any time you've ever typed out a math equation, this is basically where you're going to type it. And with the prediction piece that I mentioned earlier, what's really sweet is like, for example, if I want to do 2x cubed, I could type 2x, and then for the cube piece, I could start typing out the word cubed, or I can even start typing out the word exponent, and it will populate. So it will know to go there to the top, and I can do my cube then at that point, and then just press the right arrow key, and I just keep moving on. So it's very seamless. But what I thought I'd mention is, just like in a lot of other equation editors, or if that you've used maybe in the past, or maybe you've never done that at all, there are some shortcut keys that can save you a little bit of time. So let's say you do want to do an exponent. So even if you're just using the Pythagorean theorem and you quickly want to put an exponent in, you can actually just use the caret key, and this is what it looks like right here. And that will quickly give you that exponent rather than typing out the word exponent or whatever exponent you're trying to type in. Subscript, and this is exponent, of course, is like a superscript. But the subscript here, so we can do that as well, where it's actually an underscore. So if you want to, let's say you're doing chemistry formulas. So let's say you want to do nitrogen, but you want to have that subscript of a 2 below it. you can just do that underscore and you can start, or type in the word subscript, and that will give you that option as well. And finally, one of the other simplest ones to do for fractions is just a slash. So if you want to do 2/3 really quick, you go 2/3, and it will actually create that vertical fraction for you. And on a side note, while I'm here, is that I want to make sure that you're aware that as I'm going through all these tools, what I have for you as well for future reference is that I've created a hyperlink on all of these tools where it will take you to a supportive video. So even after our session today, or for people who couldn't attend today, if they have this presentation, they're able to see a support document video on this. So whether it's a video that I've created or Text Help has created, either way, I try to pick the best resource for you. I'm not going to talk too much about the LaTeX editor. This is just a quick example on the right-hand side. You can see what I mean by, this is like, I hate to say it, old school type way of typing out the math so that it would be recognized to look like this. But I'm just going to leave it at that. The graph editor, as you can see, it doesn't have to be as sophisticated as this. You don't need to be graphing quadratics, but I just wanted to show you really quickly what a great opportunity, whether it's even, again, not just staff, but students have access to this as well. So if you want the students, let's say, to demonstrate a quadratic formula where there's a translation of 3 units down and 3 units up, here's an example about how they can demonstrate that learning to you and that understanding. Handwriting recognition. So again, as I mentioned, with a lot of our students having touchscreen Chromebooks, if you want to actually write out the math, so they can write it, let's say 2x minus 4 equals -10, as you can see. If you look over far to the right there, you will see it actually populated now the actual text piece, the 2x minus 4 equals -10. I'm not saying it's a perfect science. If your writing is horrendous, it will maybe struggle a little bit, just like when we dictate, if we're going to be mumbling and we're not dictating very clearly, it's going to do its best, but it's not perfect. So just keep that in mind. But what I do love is that with the undo and the redo buttons, it won't wipe everything clean. It'll just do the last couple of things you've just done. So those are good tools to have handy to make sure that it's picking up your math. EquatIO Mobile, I kind of talked about this a little bit already, but I can't wait to show you this in real life. You're going to actually use your mobile device to insert. You can do handwritten math, or even let's say you have an EquatIO booklet in front of you and you want to insert one of the images from the EquatIO, excuse me. We can use a mobile device to just take a picture of it and insert it into our Google Doc or Google Drawings or whatever tool we want to use. Even if you want to put in Google Forms as like a practice quiz, take those multiple choice questions, take the images, and then put the options into your multiple choice section. And then you can have it where it's marked so the kids can get immediate feedback. And then you could provide feedback even based on their answers. So there's some great things you can do with the EquatIO Mobile. In the math space, if you click on that icon, and this is again in the right-hand side, you'll see images here as a reminder of what each of these look like on the toolbar. You will see that this is what it is. And when you open it, it actually opens up a brand new tab, but it is connected to our document. So whatever that document is that you're working with. And what happens is that a couple of new tools will appear in your toolbars. And one of them is this free hand drawing. This is shapes, and you would be amazed, and I put in the word amazed here as my own wording. It's because you will be amazed by what is available here. So if you click in there, even like beyond, I'm not talking about just polygons that are available to us. You look in there, you can look at things like there's a whole bunch of stuff even for the science piece in electricity units. You'll see all the different, I'm not even going to pretend I know all the names of all those things, but there's this incredible amount of stuff in there that you can put into your math space document. And smart shapes. So these are the interactive pieces. So if you wanted the kids to use interactive pieces like a protractor. So if they have to measure out, show that they're measuring an angle. So is this like an acute angle? Tell me why, or measure it. What is that angle? Things like that. Fraction bar, circles, so you can demonstrate the learning again when you're talking about fractions, and they can model it with the fraction bar or circle. Coordinate plane, number line, you name it. So there's lots of shapes there, and they're adding shapes all the time. When you're done with that little math space, we just have to click on this little blue button on the top right-hand corner, and then whenever we drew in this math space, which is like a whiteboard basically space, it will be put into our Google Docs or Google Drawings, whatever we are working with. Screenshot reader, as I mentioned, this is that optical character recognition tool. So it will pick up the math, and I will show you live what that looks like. But in case somebody couldn't join us today and they have this as a reference, I did create 2 little videos here to show you how it works. And this is using a PDF. And in this case, this is where I'm actually just in the web, and I just looked under math stuff. I think it was algebra. I did a search with Google Images, and it was even just a preview of just one of those images. I was able to have the math read to me. So pretty sophisticated tool here. When you're typing in your equation editor, you will have some options that you can play with. That here you have, again, you have the T, which means this is a really interesting one. This is actually something I brought up to Text Hub a couple of years ago that they didn't have, was when you type out an equation, or let's say you type out a question like solve for X, and then you want to, type it, and then have an equation afterwards. It all looked kind of weird because it was very math, like italicized, broken up. It wasn't very text friendly. But now if you want to have, so let's say text, and then type your math after the fact, or even in the new line have your math underneath, you can do that by clicking on that T. And then you can see here my example here, what is the leading coefficient of the following equation? So it looks very normal that I typed that. And then right underneath is the math. And then I can insert that math into my document. What I could also do, change it up a little bit, is change the text color if I'd like. So maybe I want to distinguish between one formula versus another formula, or just different equations, however you want to do it, or just to make it look cool because you have different colors with your math. You do have that option here with this tool. Adding to favorites. This is a really neat piece where, let's say you're constantly using the same thing. So whether it's like Pythagorean theorem or another formula, or there's actually even, there's defaults like templates for when you're multiplying, let's say, let's say to the thousandths, let's say times to the hundreds. Like you could have all these templates, and I'll show you what I mean by that. They word it much better than I do. But you have the product situation. Oh, long division. There's a template in there so the kids can demonstrate long division in there. There's even for polynomial piece, I'll show you in a little bit later too, which can help you. Even matrix. So if you want to set up a 3x3 matrix, you can do all that in here. And what I'm saying is with the favorites is if you're using your all the time, put in your favorites so you can easily retrieve it and you don't have to keep getting it back every time. The garbage can is pretty intuitive. It's in terms of just clearing the math that happens to be on your palette. You want to get rid of it. So clear, fresh plate. And I use this a lot too, even when I copy. Let's say there was a math expression that I used. I'm going to use, let's say quadratics, for example. If I have an equation written out, I will actually most likely copy that equation, paste it, and then I'll just double click on the new equation, and then I'll just maybe clear it, or I'll just maybe even just edit the few variables and then replace the math. And that's just a much quicker way than starting from scratch every time. Okay, and there's way more options as well here. I still think more for these dots is a very good description. I think though that unfortunately sometimes dots get just they don't get explored. So I highly recommend you do explore that, because you will see things like bold, italics, underline, strike through, favorites, columns. And these were the examples I was mentioning. When you have a matrix, you can have long division. And I do have this hyperlinked, so there is a little video for you to show you how to do long division if you'd like. Product columns. And you can see here you have other options here. This is actually for math symbols. You want math symbols if you want to get your column set up really quickly. So, and this is again to retrieve your favorites. So you created your favorites by using this icon. You're going to click on the more and then the heart to retrieve your favorites. Strike throughs, all these things, these are all just easily available through these 3 dots. Alignment features. So with the alignment features, when we're typing out our math, this is one of the things, again, early on they did not have. And I know some of us who are maybe a little particular about how students write out their math, it was a bit annoying to have it all over, like especially the equal sign. And you're going to laugh at me, but I know that maybe some of those hardcore math people in the room, we like the equal sign lined up. Like it's just the way it is. It's beautiful, and it just keeps things just nicely organized. So the left alignment was a bit kind of messy depending on the complexity of your equations. So they did finally come up with really nice alignments, and you can choose what you prefer. So left, center, right, aligning, as you can see, around the equal sign. You can even play a little bit more about left and right justification here, but this is pretty good. And you can even add rows and columns. So if you want to make it even go beyond where it's really lined up, you can create those rows and columns to make it the way you want. So this is just a matter of playing around with that. But even just having these top 4 is huge. So it's just nice to keep our math looking a little prettier. Okay, math image options. So when I said we create our math equation, let's say whether it's handwriting to text, or if we did speech to text or speech to math, or even if we just typed it out, and once we insert the math, the biggest misconception is that because it is an image, that you can't do anything with it. And then people get frustrated when it's in, let's say, in a Google Doc, and you want it in a particular spot, and you're like, that won't move, it won't work, or it makes all my text funny, and then you curse a little, and then you give up, and so on. Don't do that. It's all good. Like, images in Google Docs and all these other platforms are very user friendly. All you have to do is right click on it and you have some options. I usually go with the middle option here, and that will allow me then to move my image wherever I want. Okay, so keep that in mind. You don't have to worry about it not going to work nicely with your documentation. It will work nicely. What if you want to double click and edit the math, as I mentioned before? So let's say 4/5 plus 3/4, I want to change that up, or let's say I want to copy that and paste it somewhere else and then just change the math. And what I love about that is once I've made this center, like use this middle option to make it user friendly, if I copy and paste now this expression, then all of a sudden it's going to carry over that same settings, the same formatting for my new fraction. So I don't have to keep redoing that same setting for every image. So copy that, and then I'm going to paste it, and then I double click on it to edit the math and change it up, and then replace the math, and we're good to go. And you'll see this live in just a moment. If this is kind of like, I have no idea what she's saying, I do apologize. And I am also going to apologize that maybe I'm going somewhat quickly, but it is just to kind of go through the front end of this, everything that's available that you can review again on this in your own time, so that we have time to dig in, because an hour is not a long time to expose you to all of this. And we do want to look at EquatIO settings, so be aware of this. If you're not seeing something that I'm showing you today, that could very well be just due to the default settings in EquatIO, because you never know what they're going to be with updates and so on. So it's always a good idea, in your toolbar, you will see a spot where you can see the EquatIO symbol right here. You just click on it, you'll see options, you'll see specifically math options. Well, for example, the language, the default was American. So things like the word color, of course, would be OR. So if you change it to United Kingdom, you'll have the OUR, things like that. I turn all of these predictions on. So if you don't want to, so let's say the chemistry piece, if you know you're not going to teach chemistry and you don't need, let's say, balancing equations type formulas to come up, then turn it off. Okay, formulas, I can't see why you would turn that off, but that's completely up to you. And again, the students have the same options. For the toolbar options themselves, let's say, again, this LaTeX Editor is, again, something you're probably never ever going to use. Well, then why take up real estate? Just turn it off. And oops, this is just a screen capture, so I can't actually scroll down to all the other options. But basically, all the ones you saw that I went through, they're all going to be there. And you can toggle on or off all of the ones that you want or don't want. And again, our students have the exact same settings. And just like settings like read and write and so on, is that when you have your settings set under your profile, no matter what device you go onto, these settings will be there no matter where you go and what you do. Okay, and last but not least is that we have this Equatlo Academy. So this is a fairly new addition, and you'll see when you open up the actual Equatio toolbar, this guy will appear at the bottom. And what's kind of neat is, because at first I was just ignoring it, and then I realized it had some really neat titles adjacent to it, and they were random titles. So every time I went in, there'd be a new type of title, and what it was helpful basically information. So if I clicked on it, these little windows would pop up and there'd be these little training things on, let's say, here graph with audio trace. Okay, wow, like, okay, so I can now support our students by having audio attached to the graphs. How cool is that? So maybe looking into that. Another one that populated that I thought was really cool was the polynomial long division. Ooh, that's cool. I want to know how I can do that with my secondary students. What does that look like? And again, so in each of these little snippets, they have a play button and you can watch the little video to see live how these things can work. So I just thought that would be really useful, not just for yourselves, but also for your students. They do have tags here. So what I found so far at this point is that even though there's this arrow here, it's not really taking me anywhere when I'm in one of these little widgets, which is unfortunate because I'd like to maybe go to see what the rest of the menu items are that are existing, but I think that just may be a little bug. It's hard to say. But at this time, I did find that if I clicked on any one of these tags, I can learn more about that topic. And then you can kind of drill around in there, play around with all the other topics that are in there. So I love that there's a little bit of in-house learning right built in within the tool. And speaking of learning, I want to make sure that you are aware that we do have some support documentation, and I will embed this webinar or this session and this presentation under this space in our EquatIO space in our doc. And how do we get to the EquatIO space in our doc? Would be first go to our doc, technology services, and you'll see it here, technology services. And then I went to the G Suite area. So you'll see G Suite is your next option. And then EquatIO will be listed there. And I can do a quick walkthrough with you if you'd like it at some one point to find it. But I'm hoping it doesn't take you too long to get there. So just our doc, tech services, G Suite, and then you'll see EquatIO. If you click on that, you will see here all these. This is a playlist of all these EquatIO videos that exist, and there's more documentation down below. And when you get into the math space, which we'll talk about later this week, if you're excited, you know, hopefully you get as excited as I am to join me on that session. This is quick and easy access to math space information. Okay, so that was, look at that, almost bang on half an hour of front loading of everything that's involved with EquatIO before we actually dig into the tool. So I think this would be an ideal opportunity for anyone to, if they want to unmute their mic or if they want to put in the chat pod, any questions or thoughts before we get into the actual product. And while I'm waiting for you to either unmute yourself or to put something in the chat pod, I'm going to jump into some of my presentations ready to go. Okay. Waiting. All right. Well, thank you for letting me go through all that. And I have to tell you, and again, I think Chris can attest to this, I find it very difficult to not just dig in and play right out of the gates. I like to just play with the tools and highlight everything, but I really, really wanted to make sure I covered all of that with you to get going, because I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And then after the fact, like, oh, I should have remembered to show them this tool or that tool and so on. At least now you know that everything is there in that documentation. And I am going to be, on a side note, going to be adding to that documentation too, because what also was just released before I get into this is that you can use EquatIO now on an iPad. So I haven't had the opportunity to dig too much into that quite yet, and having not an iPad doesn't help, but I am going to look at the resources that they have posted. So that's just an FYI. I'll probably be adding something, if you're interested, into our documentation on our doc with the iPad as well. Okay, let's move on. So here I have is just this is just something I've been messing around in, just a NPM 2D. This is, again, doesn't really matter if it's an elementary type worksheet or a secondary worksheet. This is just a Google Doc. And this is just a prime example of where I can just play around and show you what we can do with EquatIO. So here I am in my Google Doc, and I want to click on the blue diamond to turn on EquatIO. And what is going to happen here is at the bottom is you're going to see that EquatIO is going to populate along the bottom, just as I mentioned before. And these are all the tools I mentioned, as I also indicated that if you hover over them, you will see a bit of a description so you know what is what. So I'm going to go through this somewhat quickly with you right now. So if I go to the first one right here, the equation editor, this is where I tend to do most of my work, is in here. And here's just a little example of like, hey, insert EquatIO mobile item as a Google form response. So this is one of those examples of where we have the little information. So if I clicked on that, a little window would populate and it would give me some more information about this. So keep your eyes out for that because it's some great learning. So let's say I want to do some math here. I want to type out maybe one of the responses to this, or maybe as an educator, I just want to type out even my question. So for each of the following, determine the zeros, and then I want to type out the beginning of my question. I can do all that as well in here if I wanted to, or if I can just model right here actually doing some of the math. It's completely up to you. So if I want to say focus on this particular question, I could copy it and then paste it in here and then work from there. But since the question is already there, I don't necessarily have to do that. If I just want to start with y equals, and I just want to multiply it out, so I'm using FOIL, so, you know, all these kind of things. So nothing too exciting. Let's say 12. Oops. I don't know why the bracket's there. I apologize. Okay, so I want to do 12. I want to do x squared. So this is a great example of where all of a sudden I have some options. If I want to do squared, I can just start. Okay, so I just saw someone use question about the FOIL error rows. Let me think about that. I think that's really more of a math space thing, which I can bring in. And so yes, give me a moment and I will see what I can do for that one. So if I do 2x and if I'm going to do squared, I can just start typing in squared and you can see how it populates. And I could just click on that. If I want to, let's get rid of that for a minute. If I want to do again, as I mentioned, okay, if I just want to do exponent, I do that. And then it'll take me up to the top and then I can put in 2 as my squared. This is great for, like, say, if you have anything higher than the second degree, so second, third degree, whatever I want, get rid of that. And let's say I want to do just squared where I know, hey, my shortcut key, the caret, and for me, and I think for most people it is the 6, so just shift 6, and there we go, I get my squared, and all I have to do is hit my right arrow and I move over. And then now I want to do, so 3x times -3, so -9x, and then I have 1 times 4x, I've got 4x, and finally +1 times -3, I get -3. So now the next question would be, well, how do I do the next line? So this is where we're talking about, I could do alignment if I want to. So if I hit enter, you'll see all of a sudden these alignment options. So I can choose to change this up now if I really wanted to. But in this case, it's not really a big deal because it's pretty simple with the y on the one side and so on. So I can just quickly finish this up if I wanted to, just quickly. And we're going to have -5x -3. And now it's about inserting my math. So down here, I can insert my math. And you can see it's creating this image. So it's way up here, like, what? Okay, no worries. So I'm going to get rid of this. And to get rid of this out of my way, you'd think it would be like these dots, but it doesn't work that way. It's just the X right here. Okay, so I click on this guy. And then now I just have to do the wrap text. Okay, and bring it down. And there we go. Okay, and you can move it up a little bit if you want. And I can change the margins and so on, so there's less padding around it if you really wanted to. I can even just change the size of this, so I can make a little tiny little guide depending on my space that I have on my worksheet, but there it is. And now I want to model just really quickly. I'm not going to go through the whole process with you, but let's say now that I've done that and I want to answer this question, well, I know it's going to be somewhat similar, the write-up, so I can just copy this. So I can right-click copy or Control-C or Command-C, whichever you're in. And I'm going to go Command-V or right-click and paste, grab it, bring it over, double-click, oops, click, edit math. Sorry, bad modeling. Should just be a double-click and it should have worked. Okay. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, I'm not too sure why that's not letting me edit the math now, of course. Okay, let me think about that. Let me just, oh, if I just type in the equation, oh, there we are. I just needed to open it back up again, the equation editor here. And now if I just have to replace any of this, so let's say it's going to be 6x squared, for example, real quick. Oops. 6x squared. And I want to go through this in negative 27x. And we're going to do negative 14x. Oops. All right, I don't want to spend all my time on this, but to make sure we have. All right. And let's ignore this line for just a moment. I want to just make sure, and I insert the math, and that should replace that. Yeah, good job, Tina. Where'd it go? All right, normally it even says replace math, so this is a bit of an odd thing. Oh, well. All right. Anyway, so there's obviously not perfection there, and you're probably giggling at your screens right now. Well, that's totally cool. I'm good with that. Again, like I said, in the past, it should have even been just like a double click and opens up right there. So I'm not too sure what's going on, but no big deal. So I guess it's just a matter of just clicking on this, doing your math, and then just inserting it back in. But again, what I love about this is that it's still here. So I can, good, no problem. Thanks, Holly. Oh, I know you have to go. Good luck in your session later. So when I do this, all I have to do is just change the numbers again, insert the math. So it's still there, which is kind of like the copy and paste. So that's all cool. All right. So that's just one example there of using this. So let's say I want to use the graph for something, and I'm going to do that maybe in another tool in just a moment, or even just the handwriting, just really quick. If I wanted to do this, and if I want to get here, if I want to do, let's say, writing this out instead, so I'm going to clear this math, and I want to write this out, you could just do the 2x. And here's where actually Sonia, this would be interesting. No, I can't do the handwriting. I'm going to do that with the math space. If I want to go 2x times 2x, I could write out, well, hey, that's 4x squared. And then I can go to the negative 22x. And then 2x. And then we have, sorry, negative 1 times the 2x and negative 2x. And finally, negative 1 times negative 11 is positive 11. And you can see that it's right here. And hey, what happened to my y equals? See if it's too late. And if I'm going to break it. Okay, woohoo. All right, so there you go. And I should be able to, and let's see, I'm going to break things again. If I do a second line here, if I go y equals 4x squared, I think I probably would have just done the first line. We'll see how, ooh, does it know it's an x? This is what I was afraid of. I didn't want to break it on my second line. All right. So it looks like I kind of broke it with my second line, as I mentioned, but I can just fix that up real quick like that and get rid of this guy here. And yeah. Anyways, there's obviously a couple little mistakes I need to fix up there, but I probably would have done one line at a time, and then I'd insert that math. Let's say it was perfect, insert it, and again, very similar to what we did before. Just make sure that you can align it so that it works nicely for you by clicking once. I think I put it in my documentation. You have to right click, but it looks like just click once, and you should be able to do that, and then move it wherever I want. Okay, so that's working in a Google Doc, and that's with the handwriting. I'll do maybe one last thing quickly with the speech piece, and I'll show you different platforms, like PDFs and let's say a Google form. Let me get my EquatIO back. Shoot. Sorry, my Mac's not being very friendly. I lost my, oh. Okay, all right, I'm gonna jump ship. I don't think it's gonna help because this thing's in my way. All right, so I'm gonna do, is this guy. Okay, let's turn on EquatIO. Now I'm in a Google form. Okay, so if I'm in a Google form, as I mentioned before, I happen to have little EquatIO pieces here so that I can just dig into a question. So let's say, again, I just want to model some other features of EquatIO. I can click on my guy right here. So I'm just going to click. And I'll have some options populated at the bottom. So very similar to what you just saw. Like I mentioned, no matter where you are, whether it's in math, so whether it's in Google Drawings or if it's in Google Docs or Google Slides, they're here. I'm going to now model, let's say, the speech input. 2x minus 3 equals 10. So I just taught the math, and as you can see, the speech was working here, and you can see the math here. So I can now insert that math. I can just clear that out, and let's see something else. 1/3 plus 2/3 equals question mark. So again, speech to math rather than just speech to text. Hopefully you can see the dictation works fairly well. Of course, the students will have to be careful. They have to articulate the math when they're speaking. And what I love about this is that regardless of whether you're using the equation editor, the graphing tool, or any of these tools here, you could do this for the question level or the answer level, and not just as educators, but our students can as well. So you can ask them to graph things as part of one of their answers, for example, or to solve some of the math. Does someone have a question? Okay. Chris, can you just mute that person, please? Okay, and what I'm going to do now is switch gears. I got really excited about the mobile piece, so I'm going to show you how that works. So the mobile, so EquatIO mobile. I don't think I've actually done this before, the Google Forms, so this will be interesting. Just nothing like doing it live. So what I'm going to do, and I'm also going to try to share my phone with you as well. I'm going to bring my phone over. So here's my phone. So I'm going to show you two things at one time. So what you're going to see is that I am in a situation here where I'm going to put my camera tool on. Here's my camera tool. And all I'm going to do is scan that guy. And then you see how it opens up in Safari. So it's prompting me at the top there. So I'm going to tap on that. And what it should do is look at active documents. So you can see that because it's working in the quadratic, that was my previous one that we were just looking at. Here's a linear and nonlinear quiz that I'm working on. So I'm going to tap on the linear and nonlinear quiz. And now I have some options. So this is really sweet. So I can draw my math. So I can draw, let's say, a little right here. And I want to show maybe a quadratic function where we have a positive leading coefficient. So I could do something like that. And I could check on the check mark here. I can save as math, or I can save as an image. And then I could put that into my documentation if I want. I'm going to garbage that for the moment. Okay, my other option is to do speech again. So I could use this. So your speech will appear here. Press the record button to start. 2x cubed minus x plus 10 equals y. Okay, that totally did not work very well. And I'm just going to mute, sorry, I apologize for just a moment. It might be picking up some audio in the room. So I'm just going to take 2 seconds. Oops. Okay. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so back to this. So now I'm going to go back to my tools out of here, X out of there, the recording piece, and finally the camera piece. This is what I really wanted to show you. So I happen to have allow, perfect. So let's say I wrote out some math. So I could even write out my math. I could do, you know, whether it was the graphing or the, like I say, to, you know, some solving that for my roots, my zeros. I could have had foil back to that kind of example. And I could take a picture of my math when I'm all said and done and insert that. Or as I mentioned here, we happen to have one of our EquatIO questions for grade 6. So let's say I want to take a picture of this. And maybe I don't want the answers, but it's too hard to capture it without the answers. Not a big deal. So what I can do, is just crop what I want and maybe not get the number 3 in there. Something like that. Not too bad. Check on that. I'm going to save that as an image. And now I'm going to click on the blue up arrow. You can see it doing its magic. And there you go. So what I could do now at this point is let me just stop sharing my phone for a minute. Now, what I could do is start typing it out. I could rephrase that question if it's hard for the students to see. I could say, what is the surface area of this box, and so on. And if it's open, I think it says here, if it's an open at the top, and then I can actually put in my answers just like they had, or I can make it an open response type question. It doesn't have to be, oh, it looks like I put it accidentally in with the answers, but that's okay. But you get the idea. Where I could put this part of the question, I just had to click on this one here. It looks like I clicked on this one. And then I have it in there. And then I can put all the answers in here again as multiple choice or open response where they actually can do the work and they could type out their answer, however you want to do it. What I do love with, of course, the answer keys, if I go back up to here as an example, I used EquatIO to get this graph. So is the following graph linear or non-linear? Here are the 2 options. What I could have done with this question, if I want to go back to editing, if I go to the answer key piece, if I click on that, I can say this is the answer right here. I can add answer feedback. So let's say if they said if it was linear, I could provide, hey, way to go. You're absolutely right. That's linear. I could do that. Let's say if they have non-linear, so if I could go add answer feedback, you'll see incorrect answers. I could say, please revisit again, or I can give them a little support, or hey, link to a document that might help them to distinguish between linear and non-linear graphs. And here I can also even insert maybe a YouTube video. So maybe from Equatl Academy or somewhere else that you may have a great video that you know could help support our students. I've seen it where in correct answers, like a little bit of like an animated GIF type YouTube video that goes in. It's like, yay, like rock star kind of thing. So which is kind of fun to share with the kids. But now the question is, well, how do we even get this kind of graph in here? So just real quickly, as one of the things, I'm just going to get rid of this for a minute. Let's get rid of that. And let's say I want to put a graph as part of my question, or it could be part of my answers, but let's say it's part of my question. I'm going to just jump to the actual graph tool here. And this is really quick and easy here because I do want to show the math space piece, and hopefully I can answer Sonia's question about how maybe we can do those arrows for FOIL. So if I have, let's say, y equals, you don't have to put the y, by the way. It's just a habit that I have that I do this. And if I want to do 2x, I'm going to use that caret button again to get myself up. Let's say even cube. Let's say I want to do cubic function minus 4. Okay, so I have that. And I can just change things around. I can bring this up a little bit, make it more what I want. I have way more settings that you may want to explore in here. I could do a second function. And what I love about that, it automatically does a different color. So let's say I'm going to do another cubic function, but without the leading coefficient of 2. So I'm going to just go up here and let's say 3, and then again, minus 4. Okay, oh, it was doing the different colors for me last time, but that's okay. I can just click on that and I should be able to change the color. Yeah, I don't know why it's not doing it for me now. Okay, insert graph. And when we get in here, insert graph, upload. And you'll see it here. And then, of course, I can talk about down in the question what specifically is my question, and then what are my possible option answers here. And, of course, because it's a Google form, we have lots of different answers we could do. When you want actual immediate feedback, though, we're using answer keys. We all know that probably multiple choice is the best bet here. Not to say you don't have to have, let's say, limited to 2 options. Let's say it's a true and false question. Just make that still multiple choice. Just put true or false as one of your options. Okay, So let's say I want to do a math space question, and this is maybe something I want to look at is this equation right here. So let's do a math space. So if I go to insert math space real quick, you'll see, as I mentioned, I warned you, we were going to have another tab that was going to open up. This is going to be a math space that is connected to this document. And I know that because here in the top left-hand corner, here is the document that's indicating that it is connected. And if you do come to the math space piece, we're going to really dig into this environment, but just the math space not being linked to any documents, I will show you how it looks a little bit different. Okay, so I did, let's see if that worked. Nope. All right, so if I wanted to go back to that question for just a moment. So I have, let's say, the y equals, I did try to copy that and paste it, but I don't think that was going to work, but that's okay. I'm just going to replicate that real quickly, 2x minus 1 and 2x minus 11. And what's nice is because I have all the same tools. Everything's great. They just have additional tools. So I'm just going to retype that out real quickly. So I have the 2x minus 1, and we have the 2x minus 11. And what I love about this environment, so I'm going to insert that math. You have a little more flexibility here. I can make that a little bit bigger if I wanted to. I do have, if I want to, that freehand that we mentioned is a tool in this environment, but not in the other one. So let's say I wanted to do this. So Sonia, maybe this is what we're looking for, right? So if we wanted to do this, showing our foil, and I can keep going. And so even if it's just for the students to demonstrate, which are we going to multiply first? What's the rule? However you want to word that. And then you can have the students actually answer here. I can even do it freehand, the math, the answer. You can do, of course, still the handwriting to text, but if you just want the kids to even write it out and they can just do the math, let's say with your touchscreen Chromebooks, and have this put back into your document, that's completely up to you. Or just keep it in the math space environment, which again, I'd love to show you if you're able to join me later this week with the math space one. So minus 22x, and you can see where I'm going with this. It's the exact same thing as we were doing before. And of course, me using my mouse versus a touchscreen makes a bit of a difference. And I mean, telling you there's tons of options here that we can have, and I can just now insert that. I know I'm not done yet, but just due to time, I'm going to click on this insert, very much like what we saw with the mobile, that's going to jump into my document. Now, there's going to be a huge image here for just a heads up. All right. And again, just like any other image, I can reshape this to any size I want. I can make sure it's middle here, so that I can just manipulate it however I want. Okay. And I think just one thing I want to mention too, before we go on to my last thing I'm going to show you, all of these, because they are images, what I love about this is that you can add alternative text. So this is important for visual impaired people, so that you can provide an alternate text, so that if you have this screen read to you, you could have the math read out as well. So that might be something you need, if you need to explore, it is an option for all of these images. Okay, so I wanted to do the screenshot reader real quick. So I'm going to do that actually in a PDF, because we haven't seen a PDF yet. So I think I have one open here. Okay, perfect. So last thing, PDF, like I mentioned, is two-step process with the PDFs, which is why I wanted to make sure I showed this to you. So this was in my Google Drive. I open up my Google Drive and I'm in like this preview page. Right now, it doesn't look like there's any writing or drawings or anything done in this PDFs. And this is a big common question I've had. This is why we're actually doing a whole session on just PDFs this week, because I've had a lot of people asking about this. But I'm going to show you in particular the math piece. So I'm going to go to Open With. Read and write for Google Chrome, step 1, because actually Text Help actually is the owner of Read and Write and EquatIO. So this is why they work so well together, because they're under the same umbrella of the same company. So once that opens up, you're going to see some writing that I've already done and played around with this document a little bit. And that's the whole idea too. So let's say you've done some math, you've done some work, or the students have done some work on a PDF. Well, how come I don't see it? Well, if you don't open it back in the read and write for Google Chrome, you're not going to see the changes. So you really do, if you're going to make all the changes in there, to see the changes later on, you have to reopen the same tool. Now I can open up EquatIO as well. And I want to show you just even the screenshot reader, because I think that's one of the tools we haven't looked at yet. And I just have to show you how well this reads the math. And I'm hoping you pick up the audio for this. I wonder if it's going to work because I have my headset on. We'll see.
1/6 plus 5 over 12.
I have no idea if you heard that or not, but it actually have an English voice, and it read it out really well. And I can replay it. Yes, you heard it. Thank you, Sonia.
Yeah, we heard it. Sure.
Yay, okay, great. Chris, thank you. Good to know. So not only did it, so I could play it as often as I want. Hey, wait, I didn't hear her again. I want to do that again. I can do that. What I also can do, which is super sweet, is I can edit this math, edit with EquatIO. Look at that. Takes my fraction, now rewrites it. So I have a couple of options. I could just go to the next line and do the work, or I can even think next step. I'm like, okay, I've got 1/6 plus 5/12. Well, I know I have to multiply the numerator by 2. So I can just, if it's slowly. Okay, I think my computer's finally, there we go. So I know I'm going to multiply the numerator by 2. I know I'm going to multiply the denominator by 2. Now I can just go to my next step. Oh, and of course, because Miss Franzen wants to have that equal sign in front here, it's imperative. There's my equal sign. And then I can do 7/12. And that's where I'm going to do the slash. As I mentioned to you before, it's a shortcut key, 7/12. Let's insert that math. Okay, and it inserted it right here. I'm going to just drag it down. It works a lot easier in this case to do this where these dots. I can resize nicely and click the check mark when I'm happy with it. And booyah, it's right there underneath the question. I have the math answered. Super sweet to use. Again, when we get into PDFs, I can show you how we can integrate into Google Classroom. We could do all of those pieces. But for now, I just want to make sure you saw how the math can be read even in a PDF. It could be read, and how you can even do the math here, right here in a PDF. And then students can submit it back into Google Classroom or wherever it works. And as long as you open up and read and write, you will see the work that's here. Okay, so that was a whole lot in a short period of time. And I will stop the recording here in a moment. But before we do, I want to just remind you that there is support, and it's on the last page of the slideshow. There's under, and I am going to embed this presentation that we have today in the recording of our session in here in our doc. So if you go to our doc, Technology Services, Google Suite, EquatIO, you'll see tons of videos, support videos. And don't forget, in my presentation for most of these features, I have a YouTube link here, which you just have to click on. And if you're not aware, if you click on it once here, you can click here to get the link, or go to presentation mode and you can click on the links there as well. And then you can see all the support documents that are all available. Hopefully you learned something today and you're able to take this back with you. But if you do have any questions after I stop recording, feel free to jump in with any questions that you may have.